Welcome in, everybody, to the Bat Flip Podcast. I'm your host, David. Tonight, Damien is out. I'm being joined by Matt, as always. And Matt, how you doing this week before we get into our monthly breakdowns?
I'm doing very well. It's can't believe we're episode 132. That just kind of it's crazy to me. But yeah, doing good. Been watching my Braves play, and it's been a pretty crazy. It's been a pretty fun team to watch this year, to say the least. But I everything's good here. It's extremely hot outside this week. I think I'm getting into like Damien temperature territory, but also with the humidity of Alabama. So it's supposed to be like 103 here, like the rest of the week. So pretty rough there. But yeah, everything's good. How have you been, David?
I'm good. It's smoky in Chicago. They've got the wildfires up in Canada, and
Yeah.
the air quality over here is really bad. It's like walking into a campsite every time you walk outside right now. But got to
Yeah.
watch the Cubs play in London this last week. That was pretty cool. They're already down tonight, which not great, but
Did
they've
Nick
been.
Castellanos do it tonight?
Schwarber got knocked in by Trey Turner.
Oh, okay. I
So, but it's
was
it's
gonna.
Jameis. We'll get into it. We'll get into exactly what's been going on when it comes to a lot of these teams. But um, you know, I'm excited to kind of look back at June because remember we were talking earlier and mentioned that June was maybe the month where these teams kind of to turn it around or become what sellers, and we're gonna see that a couple of teams I think are kind of confirming what we were worried that they might be at the start of June. I'm kind of excited to get into it. We're going to start with a division that is not decided by any means, but is also very much a wild card division in that there could be four playoff teams in the AL East this year. The way it's looking, June was a good month for all of the Tampa Bay Rays, who were 54 and 27. The Orioles are 4 games back at 48 and 29. The Yankees are 9.5 games back, but very much in the wild card race at 43 and 35. Blue Jays are 43 and 36 and the Red Sox are 40 and 39. So 5 teams above 500 in the AL East. Matt, how was June for this division? It's pretty much the same order it was in to start June, but I think the Rays have widened their gap a little bit.
Yeah, it's been a really interesting division to keep up with. Every one of these teams this month has had like huge downs and huge ups, except maybe the Orioles. I think they've just kind of been pretty good the whole month. You look at the Rays and they've continued to win. They played well for most of the month. These last couple of weeks have been a little bit less great. I know that I think they lost the series. They dropped a series maybe to the Royals last weekend or something. So that wasn't great. The pitching injuries are really what stacked up for the Rays. In fact, the other day, McClanahan got pulled out of his start. They're already missing Rasmussen, Springs to Tommy John. They've missed Eflin at times, although he's pitching right now and he's been really good. Glass now has missed a lot of time. He's back now, but now McClanahan going down for a little while, but it sounds like he's going to be okay to keep going. The injuries aren't great for them right now, but they have a big lead in the division, 4 games over the Orioles. And I think that the teams that have the upside to really overtake the Rays are more like the Blue Jays and Yankees that have maybe the star power to be able to do it. And they're 9.5, 10 games back. So I like the Rays right now in this division. Look at these other teams. I mean, the Blue Jays have had their ups and downs. They're pretty kind of had a pretty good month. They're 43 and 36. They're in a good position right now. They are 10 games behind the Rays, but they're in a good solid playoff position right now. The Yankees have been really interesting just because we'll talk about Aaron Judge being out is a big deal. And it sounds like he might be out for a long time, a lot longer than expected. So, and then of course the Orioles have been good, and the Red Sox have kind of like stayed afloat. I just with this division, 500 right now just seems like it's going to be insurmountable to get in the playoffs. But what do you think so far, David?
one interesting note that I would put in here is that the Rays have done all this without Tyler Glass now for the
Yeah.
most part, right? He's been pretty mediocre, 4.45 ERA, giving up a lot of home runs, just hasn't quite been himself. And then the Blue Jays are several games over 500, very much in the wild card race, despite Alek Manoah being, mentioned that he
Yeah.
got sent back to the complex
Yeah.
league. He had his first start today and
Yeah.
he gave
Oh
up
my
10
gosh.
runs in the complex league. So that issue is not resolved and is likely to continue until Manoa can get going. But the Blue Jays have been able to win games anyway. Um, you know, the Orioles seem like a very steady presence. I was taking a look at the projected standings by Fangraphs. Orioles projected for 90 wins, which if we were looking at that going into the season, that is crazy, and that outpaces the Blue Jays and Yankees right now, both at 88. So and that's I think the Yankees one even I think it's going to be a little high. Yankees are in a really precarious spot right now without Judge. That's the big one for me is that if the Yankees don't have Aaron Judge, that's not a very good team. They have a very very low on base percentage. They're reliant very much on their pitching and Garrett Cole can only start one every 5 days. The rest of those guys have to step up and when it's not Cole and it's not some of those better pitchers, the Yankees tend to not score as many runs, and that's just a worrisome thought so far. But they we'll see, man.
Yeah.
I'm worried about the Yankees.
Yeah, and you talk about that, and I mean, like you say, it's just one really pitching injury of the Yankees too. And I mean, if they things could go very poorly for them very quickly if they lose Garrett Cole or even somebody like Severino or Herman or somebody that's been pretty good for them this year. We'll see if Carlos Rodon ends up coming back, and then it could go either way because they could get Judge back, and I think Rizzo's been a little bit better lately, and Stanton never hasn't really gotten going. They have some talent there that can, you know, make their offense at least okay. But right now, I mean, I like what the Rays have done. The Blue Jays are an interesting team to me right now too because they've got, you talked about Alek Manoah, but Vlad Jr. is also really struggling, and
Well, he's got like a 120
he
WRC plus, but he's
he's
not in for power.
yeah, he's not hitting for power. He's hitting the ball on the ground a ton. And with his defense, you cannot have a 120 WRC plus and be a really good player. Like he really
Hmm.
needs to be DHing. He's been a horrible, horrible defender at first base this year. Like there's some things there that you know the the Blue Jays have that at one facet. Like this is a pretty extended period of Vlad Jr. being a good hitter, but not like an elite hitter. And you look at the Blue Jays as a team that like that could also swing the other way too, where if Vlad Jr. kind of gets back to that 2021 form, like he could be, and he could really propel that team in the second half. So, and another thing I guess we could kind of look at today is these teams all five of these teams have some kind of holes to their teams. The Rays, you've got the pitching depth in the rotation with injuries, and the Orioles pitching. The Yankees could use a bat. The Blue Jays could use probably some bullpen help. Maybe a bat. So the trade deadline could be really big in this division. And then
Hmm.
do the Red Sox sell? Is another thing.
Yeah,
Like
they're
it's
in it. They're in the wild card race
they
at 40 wins.
they are, but like are they going to be at 40 wins come next month? And or obviously they will be there. Are they going to be at 500 come next month? And where they stand in this division, like it's going to be hard for them to make the playoffs by beating these teams enough times. They
Hmm.
still do have to play these teams more than the rest of the league, even if it is more balanced this year. So that'll be an interesting thing to look at.
One note for the Blue Jays is that Dalton Varsho has been pretty mediocre, if
Yeah.
not bad, and Gabe Moreno and Lourdes Gurriel over in Arizona have propelled them to the division lead. We'll get there in a little bit, but uh, just worth noting that I think Toronto, we analyzed that trade and we liked that trade originally, but man, oh man, Varsho needs to step it up for the Blue Jays. That is a trade they cannot afford to lose value on, and right now they've lost a pretty significant chunk.
Yeah, that's a tough one, and that the Blue Jays just a lot of the pieces they brought in. I mean, Barrios has been a lot better this year than he was last year, but that trade, I guess the Twins haven't really gotten all that much
Nah,
production out of
yeah.
that trade, but still, I mean, that's been a little bit of a tough one in the fact that you gave up a lot of what you thought was high end, prospects for Barrios, and he hasn't really panned out fully to what you're expecting. And then you look at, The Matt Chapman trade. I don't really know
That
what the
one's working
A's
good though.
return has done, but Matt Chapman's been good.
Yep.
But this year he's been really good. He's kind of dropped a little bit, since that hot start. But yeah, I mean, it's been interesting for them. They've made some good moves too. Oh, the
Yeah.
Teoscar Hernandez trade was a good one for them.
Yeah.
Uh,
Isn't Eric Swanson the one they got for him too? He's been
yeah,
really,
he
really good for
is,
them.
and Teoscar has not been good for the Mariners, so that's a
Teoscar's
good one.
doing Teoscar things, hitting home runs, and that's it. So,
Yeah.
and then also you've got the Kevin Gosman deal anchoring that rotation. So you
Oh
do
yeah,
feel like the Blue Jays have a solid rotation, if not
they do.
a spectacular one, and it's lacking in that what Alek Manoah brought last year, and I think that's kind of the difference in this Blue Jays team versus last year's.
Yeah, yeah, for
So
sure.
yeah, if you want to move on to the AL
Yeah.
Central, we can talk about this fun group of
Oh
teams
golly.
fighting it out. What is clearly the worst division in baseball right now. The Minnesota Twins are ahead. They have maintained their lead on this division, but they are a 40 and 40 team, 500 exactly at the lead of the division. The Cleveland Guardians are second at 37 and 40. The Detroit Tigers have fallen to third. They are 34 and 43. The White Sox are fourth at 34 and 46. The Royals are 22 and 56 and spent some time this month as the worst team in baseball. The A's have lost a few games and the Royals jumped ahead of them, but uh, when it comes to this division, Matt, they're all fighting for first because I don't think they're going to be fighting for the wild card.
Yeah, this is an interesting this is an interesting division. Honestly, almost like the opposite of the AL East, where you're like, are the Red Sox going to sell because they have a good record, but like they just doesn't seem like there's that much of a chance for them to jump any of these teams. Well, in the AL Central, it's like who's I mean, you're if you're the White Sox, you're 6 games back in the division with the team that's first place being bad. Like, are you? There's. I mean, could you even consider not selling or even
Mm-hmm.
buying? Like, that's the thing. And the Guardians is the same way. The Tigers are only 4.5 games back. Like that,
Mm-hmm.
the
That's
Tigers
in it.
aren't good at all. They're awful. But my gosh, like this,
They're in.
that's they're in it right now. I mean, it's crazy. But I do think the Twins will get going. If you look at the Twins' numbers, like their best 2 hitters by WAR have been Willie Castro and Ryan Jeffers. Like Byron Buxton has been a 105 WRC plus. He's been really rough. Of course, he's been injured the last few days. He's back tonight in the DH spot, but he hasn't been playing center field. And like we talked about before the season, we had a lot of discussion about whether they
Mm-hmm.
DH him or not. Well, his bat is not good enough to carry as a DH right now. Like in the past, it has been. Well, a 105
Right.
WRC plus, if you're going to be DHing every day, is not going to cut it.
Right.
And then you look at like Carlos Correa has not hit this year. He does have a 247 BABIP, which is pretty low for him. I think he's typically run somewhere around 300 in his career. So part of it's probably been a little bit of bad luck, but he's also dealt with some injury. And I mean, they don't have any like they just don't seem to be able to hit. I mean, their
Yeah.
pitching's been really good. Obviously, the big three in the rotation: Joe Ryan, Sonny Gray, Pablo Lopez have been really good. Joe Ryan's getting torn up tonight, but he's been like
He's
really, really
yeah.
good this year. It's just the Braves are good, but like I mean, their bullpen could use a little bit more depth, but this team is definitely the best. I mean, you look at the rest of these teams, the White Sox, they still have what you would think is some good pitching in their rotation, like Giolito, Cease. I mean, you would like to think that Lance Lynn could get going at some point.
He had a
Um,
16 strikeout game this
I
month.
know, and they lost. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and that's kind of the story of the White Sox and their lineup. I mean, they've got players there like Luis Roberts been really good this year. You look at you look at their some of their other guys. Jake Berger's been a breakout for them this year, but like they just seemed like for whatever reason they haven't been able to do anything. Like they're just not that good. And then I mean the Guardians just they don't hit for any power whatsoever. Their pitching's injured. Um, and then I mean the Tigers and the Royals. I know the Tigers 4.5 games back, but I just even though the Twins have not been playing very well. I think the Twins will have enough of a run in them to win 83, 84 games. I just do
Mm-hmm.
not see the Tigers winning more than 70 games. Like maybe they do, but I think they'll sell. And the Royals, I mean, we make a lot of fun of the A's here, but the A's at least are in a tough division and losing all these games. Like the Royals, that division is horrible that they're in, and they're still like on just this horrible pace. Like it's kind of hard to believe how bad the Royals have been. Vinny Pasquantino's out for probably for
The
the
season.
year. Yeah, he's out for the year, and then they've had a couple pitching injuries too. Like I don't think we've you know looking back at the beginning of the season, like Chris Bubich was pitching really good for
Hmm.
them for the first couple weeks of the season, and then he went and had Tommy John surgery. So like they've had some bad luck too. But man, that team's been bad, and it just seems directionless there. A lot of these teams, honestly, the White Sox, Tigers, and Royals all seem very directionless. The Twins seem like they're just good enough to make the playoffs in a bad division. So I guess that's their direction is they're contending. And the Guardians, I have no idea. Like I guess they're still trying to contend. They have some good pieces there. I think they'll be a little bit better than they've been so far, but this division is just atrocious. But I think the Twins are probably coming out of here, and I think the Tigers and Royals will for sure sell. I do think the White Sox end up selling. Um, I don't know what you think about
Yeah.
that, but I,
The the big issue for the White Sox is who do you sell other than maybe Lucas
yeah,
Giolito, right? Like
Giolito for sure.
we've mentioned that they have a lot of more controlled pieces, but nobody's buying Lance Lynn right now, right?
Right.
Like he's very volatile. You know, you believe in the former stuff, but he's older. So I don't know if a trade for Lance Lynn wouldn't really bring you back anything. I don't think. Cease has just been pretty mediocre this season. He hasn't really been the
He had a
same powerhouse.
he had a good start last night, I think, against the
Right.
Angels. He struck out 11, no walks or something, which is very
Yeah.
encouraging. But
Yeah, the big problem for the White Sox has been the offense all
yeah,
season, and Tim Anderson's been dreadful. I
yeah,
mean, one of the worst players in baseball this season, and that's disappointing because when Tim Anderson is on, that's an exciting player, but his skill set was always very, very risky, right? With a high contact rate, a very high BABIP, and a very low walk rate. That's the kind of guy who can go through a rut that just takes and sinks his season completely. And you're not getting any value from him. Moncada's been bad, right? You're relying on guys like Jake Berger and Luis Robert, and Luis Robert's one of the most volatile players in baseball. So the White Sox, are not in a good spot right now. I don't envy them at all. I think we would be remiss without mentioning that, like Joe Kelly's having a good season. Joan Duran's been really good in this division as
yeah,
well. Emmanuel Clase has been pretty good in this division. They got some relievers here. This is not a division that
yeah.
needs bullpen
Well,
help, but there
don't
could be
forget
some
the.
relievers coming out of here. Yeah.
And I was gonna say, don't forget the Royals. They have Chapman, who's had a bit of a bounce back this year, and they have Barlow, who both of those guys could be on the move. That could honestly get back the best package of any
Hmm.
players in this division of these sellers. Like I guess Giolito, if the White Sox trade him, probably gets back more just since Chapman and Barlow are relievers with Chapman being a rental. And I don't
Yeah.
is Barlow a
He,
rental?
he will be, yeah, I believe. But you've also
Yeah,
got Jason Foley pitching well in Detroit. Alex
yeah.
Lange has been pretty good in Detroit as
Alex
well.
Lange is one.
Gregory Santos hasn't been bad for the White Sox. You've got a lot of sneaky good arms in
Yeah,
this division in terms of bullpen help. So who decides to pitch or who decides to sell will have impact when it comes to some of these other teams that are looking for
yeah.
bullpen help, and that'll affect the rest of the league around them. But
Yeah, and also to what extent they sell, because if the
mhm,
White Sox or the Guardians, if they have a bad few weeks, if they sell, it'll be interesting to see if they go just full blown, like say, hey, this core isn't working, we need to blow it up and redo it, tear it down and redo, or if they're going to go out and say, this year's not going to work, but we still believe in our core, we're going to trade our rentals, guys that we don't think are going to come back, and get what we can, but run it back next year with a similar core and just maybe try to add around the edges. That'll be something that's interesting to look at.
it's also worth noting that Terry Francona was out tonight with an illness, and I believe was
That's
taken to the hospital.
not great.
Um, so I sent the tweet. I want to double check that. Jeff Passan tonight, Terry Francona not managing tonight, undergoing precautionary tests at a hospital in Kansas City. So
Mm.
hopefully Tito is okay, but he is on the older side, and
Yeah, he's had the
um,
health issues in the
yeah, he's
past
had health
too.
issues before. Yeah, I do hope Terry's okay, but that's just not a good. It's not a good start to your July here as we come up on this 4th of July break. Moving along to the AL West, we have the Texas Rangers in first place at 47 and 31. They retained from the beginning of the month. Astros are currently second, but they're in a virtual tie with the Angels. 42 and 36 are the Astros, 43 and 37 are the Angels. The Seattle Mariners are 38 and 39, and the Athletics are 20 and 60. 5 games back are the Astros and Angels. 8.5 back are the Mariners. Mariners are kind of on the outside looking in of that wild card race. The Astros and Angels are at the forefront of it. Um, you know, this is a tough division, man.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, I really like the Rangers. I think that Corey Seager coming back and playing as well as he has been a big deal for them. They do have this advantage right now of 5 games, which is really really nice. Um, I, I worry just long term about their depth. Like their pitching has been good this year, but I worry a little bit long term about that. The bullpen has been, they've been good all around really, but it's just it seems like some of their hitters are a little bit volatile. Marcus Simeon seems like a kind of guy who's gone through stretches, like he's been streaky these last couple of years, and you look at Adolis Garcia as a guy who's probably, he's always been a little bit of a streaky player. They've had a lot of guys kind of hit really well in the first month of the season, or the first couple months of the season, that have maybe cooled off a tiny bit this month. The Astros, I've watched the Astros, and I'm just not that impressed by them.
Mm-hmm.
Like the pitching is good, but Valdez and Christian Javier are really good. But like behind that, Hunter Brown has been really good for a rookie, but he's been kind of a mid rotation type, caliber pitcher this year. But behind that, like it's just there's not that much there. The bullpen is just okay. Like Ryan Presley, or Ryan Presley's really really good in the back end. But and then you look at their lineup, and it's not the same guys. Like, Jordan Alvarez is out. He'll be out for a little bit longer. Like, Altuve's been good, but you look at Jose Abreu has just not worked out for them. You got Marty Maldonado in there every single night. You've got Chas McCormick or Myers, whoever's playing center every night. Like they're fine players, but it's just not that same kind of like, in the past you've been just scared of almost everybody in that lineup, and this year it's just not that way anymore. And the Angels, man, that franchise is so snake bit. Like
Mm-hmm.
it seems like they get on a roll, and it's just like then they just get massive amounts of injuries, and it's really unfortunate. So far this year, Trout and Otani, fingers crossed, have been healthy all year. Otani's been insanely good, like best player in baseball by far. We've been saying that for a while that he's so good, but like this year has just been even more remarkable at the plate. But Trout's been okay. I mean, he's been good, but he hasn't been as normal like what we've come to think of Mike Trout being this year. But they started making moves this week.
Yeah, the Angels have gone out and acquired Eduardo Escobar and Mike Moustakas from the Mets and Rockies, respectively. A couple of veteran players there to kind of buoy their first base and third base situations. What with Gio Urshela being out for the season. Also, I believe Jordan Alvarez is down right now for the Astros, so that lineup is even less potent with him not in the lineup than it usually is. And you know, you mentioned the Astros being a volatile team. I just don't know that Alex Bregman's been very good either this season. Slug just hasn't been there for him. He had a home run this week, but that's a guy who needs to get going for the Astros. Same for Jose Altuve. He hasn't really been present for this team this season after that injury in the World Baseball Classic. You also got the Mariners rotation, right? One of the best rotations in baseball with Luis Castillo, George Kirby. Uh, that's one that Logan Gilbert. You expect that team to be able to put together some wins, but Rodriguez hasn't been there, right? It's the same old story. Ty France hasn't been there, and if that team, considers selling, there's a lot of really valuable pieces in that group that could be on the market. And the problem is the Mariners have really bought in, and they're trying to get there. And it's a team that with a stretch of really good games from the offense, maybe even their own bye, they could really step it up and get into the wild card race. But it's man, the Rangers look so good right now. I kind of disagree with you on Simeon and Garcia being kind of streaky guys. I think those guys have been really steady. They are what they are. You know, Garcia's not going to walk a ton, but he's going to hit for power and he's going to drive in runs. Man, he's got I think second most
Yeah.
RBIs in the majors right now. That's a guy who produces runs in the middle of the order for that team. Marcus Simeon's been he's leading the AL in runs. He's been on base all season. He's been very good base running. He's playing great defense at second base, just doing Marcus
Yeah.
Simeon things. And you know the way that the Rangers have constructed this lineup around two big free agent contracts in the middle infield, which is a really good way to do that. Those are very, reliable players that are always going to play good defense. And, in Corey Seager's case, he's always going to be, a almost 300 hitter with a, 380 OBP and a good slug, right? Corey Seager's he's always there. He's always present.
So good.
Then they add some breakouts from Jonah Heim, Josh Jung, and Adolis Garcia. That's how you get an offense like this Rangers offense is right now, and they've balanced it out very nicely. And I really like that team. I think they're going to keep it going, and they're going to buy it here coming up. And the way they've been aggressive in free agency, I think they're going to keep being aggressive on the trade market.
Yeah, it'll be interesting with them to see if they've got those pitchers that they've drafted the last few years that have been either gotten banged up or have struggled at times, like Jack Leiter and Kumar Rocker and some of those guys. And it'll be interesting to see if they tap into that pool of guys who still have a lot of value around the league. I think people still like their upside, but they maybe aren't quite as highly thought of prospects as they once were. It'll be interesting if they decide to tap into that to make a big move at the deadline, maybe for a controllable piece, since
Mm-hmm.
this roster is all controllable. But we'll see if that happens. I think that and I think all these teams. You mentioned the Mariners. They DFA'd Chris Flexen, who had a
Yep.
couple of pretty good years, but this year had been horrible. And I just don't ever think that offense is going to get going. They made some moves at that
Yeah.
were that were pretty good on paper, but they just the to help that team around the edges, and they just didn't work out. Like I think we loved the trade for I think we both loved the trade for Teoscar Hernandez for them. Give
Yep.
up a reliever for him, and
Yep.
he just hasn't been very good. I mean, he hasn't been the same guy this year. And then like stuff like Colton Wong, they brought him in this year, and I mean last year he had his career high WRC plus, and this year he just was awful all year. So you kind of look at it, just hasn't worked out for them. Now, one thing to look at with the Mariners is that last year, if you remember, they had like a horrible start and they
Mm-hmm.
just got red hot in the second half. Now, they also had a lot of pieces like Eugenio Suarez that just hit last year, whereas you probably shouldn't be relying on him to do quite what he did last year again. Like you feel like he could be good again, but maybe not what he did last year. And I think that might be a little bit of what the Mariners are looking at too.
Yeah. The big issue with the Mariners, I think, is that they haven't gotten any production really on offense from
Yeah,
guys like that were there last
yeah,
year, like J.P.
yeah,
Crawford,
and
like Ty France,
Julio
like Eugenio
Rodriguez.
Suarez, yeah, and Rodriguez.
Yeah, he's been good, but he hasn't been the same. Like they needed an MVP version of him,
Hmm.
like they did got last year to be what they were last year. But what I guess one last thought on the AL West is, and that might be like one of the few times we talk about the A's, but do you think the A's move some of their pieces that have been good this year, but are very controllable, and primarily talking about Ryan Noda and
Hmm.
and Brent Rooker, because they've got like 6 years of control on each of them, and I think that Rooker, at least for sure, is a guy that you feel like you might be selling high on him if you sell him this year. Whereas, is he actually going to be this good in 4 or 5 years? Or you kind of look at him as a Rendell type, where it's like he's been good this year, but he's probably not going to keep this up for a couple more years and be part of the future.
Both of those guys have a very Joey Gallo look to them right now,
A
and
little
it's
bit,
very scary. 30% strikeout rate is it's exploitable, right?
yeah,
You can't run something that high. Noda's got just a spectacular approach. He's able to take so many walks. That's very, a 387 on base is very attractive for any team, but dedicating current prospects for a guy that is producing at the major league level, but he's producing in a lineup where he's not getting pitches anyway,
yeah.
right? He's the best hitter in the lineup at this point, and is he going to be able to do damage when he's got to go up there and get the hit instead of take the walk? I don't know, right? I don't know that some of these playoff teams are going to be willing to go out there and give up legitimate prospects for Ryan Noda or Brent Rooker.
Yeah.
I do think it's a smart move if you are a borderline team right now, like the Mariners, right? We'll talk about some more, maybe one of those AL Central teams that need a hitter, that can really take some offense to the next level. They would love to get there, but I just don't know if either of those guys are someone that you're going to give up legitimate prospects for at this
Yeah.
point. I like both of those guys. I want them both to be good hitters. I want them both to be 130 WRC plus hitters for the rest of their, you know, rest of their career, right? Like
Yeah.
keep
Oh yeah.
going. But there's no evidence that that's going to continue, and I think that's the reason they haven't been moved yet. I'm sure teams are calling in on them, but they're probably calling in with very light offers, and the A's have no reason to sell them because what if these guys stay this good? You can hang on to that and wait for those guys to
Yeah. And
prove it a little more.
yeah, and you mentioned Ryan. Ryan Noda's also a Rule 5 pick, so there might be
Hmm.
some weird like, does he, if a team takes him on, like, do they think he's gonna stick with the big leagues? Because you could also be giving up prospects, and then if he just has a horrible second half, you feel like you want to option him, and you can't. So,
Right.
but definitely an interesting thing to look at there, and we'll see what happens in this division. It's gonna be I think this is gonna be a good one to watch the rest of the year.
I think you're right. So let's move over to the National League. We'll talk about your National League East. The Atlanta Braves are leading this division at 51 and 27. They are rapidly approaching the Tampa Bay Rays for the best record in Major League Baseball. The Miami Marlins are 6.5 games back at 45 and 34, and in second place in this division by a lot. The Phillies are 40 and 37 and 10.5 games out. The Mets are 35 and 43, 16 games back of the Braves in first, and the Nationals are 30 and 48, 21 games out. Matt, the Braves have been really good, but the order of that division is awfully odd for what we left it at the end of May.
Yeah, I mean, first off, I don't. The Braves are insane. Like
Mm-hmm. Hold
they've
on,
been
guys. Hold on. Wait. Let me say that so that
yeah,
they know it's not the bias. Guys, the Braves are insane. Okay, go ahead, Matt.
yeah. Well, I mean, and in the past, I've been a little bit like I've tried to be objective with them and everything, and have been a little bit cautious of the Braves, and I still have
Mm-hmm.
some things that I'm a little bit cautious about with the Braves right now, but I mean, they're just hitting home runs at just an insane clip right now. I mean, they hit 5 home runs off Joe Ryan tonight. We just talked about Joe Ryan is a really good pitcher. Like, he's got a sub-3 ERA, a sub-3 FIP. Like, he is just an insanely good pitcher, and I mean, they're doing it like on a nightly basis, and it's one of those stretches where it's like when they lose a game, it feel, and we'll probably talk about one of the games they lost here in a minute, but when they lose a game, it's like it takes everything to go wrong for that team for them to just lose one game. Like, it's like
Mm-hmm.
11-10 with a bunch of like lucky hits or something, and a fluke. So it feels like it takes just a horrible outing by a pitcher, or it feels like it takes some kind of fluke for them to lose a game, which is just crazy. But moving on from them, and they're easily going to win the division at this point. It looks like. I mean, you never know what might happen. You could have injuries and stuff, but they have 99% playoff odds. They've got 96% division winning odds. They have 22% World Series winning odds, which is pretty wild. But if you look beyond the Braves right now, the Marlins have been really good, and
Mm-hmm.
people, including myself, have been really like just bearish on them because their run differential's not good. They were winning tons of one-run games, but I feel like they're playing better lately, and they are the
They
type
are.
of team that could have good records in those one-run games. Like, not maybe not
Mm-hmm.
quite the level that they've had this year, but like a good one. So
Yeah, absolutely. And before we get to the Mets, let
yeah.
me let me let me give you guys the updated stats really quick on this guy. This guy named Ronald Acuna Jr. I just want to go over this because Ronald Acuna Jr. is doing something that I don't think I've seen, and it's blowing my mind. So first thing, Ronald Acuna Jr.'s strikeout rate for his career when he came up at age 20 per year, 25% when he came up, 26% in 2019 when he almost went 40-40, 30% in 2020, 24% in 2021. Clearly was cutting back, but got hurt, right? He's right at the same plate appearances that he took in 2021. He's at that same level of plate appearances this year. That year he was really good, 4.4 wins above replacement player. 2022 last year, it seemed like that he was sapped of that power. That's when he got hurt. That's why he had the ACL. 24% strikeout rate. So two consecutive seasons of 24%, coming off of three seasons of like 30%. He was getting better, but it's pretty clear he had stabilized at 24%. This year, he's got a 12.5% strikeout rate. He's got 19 home runs, 35 stolen bases, 70 runs scored, a 166 WRC plus, and he's leading Major League Baseball in wins above replacement. I like this is he's going to win MVP unanimously. He might be 40-40. He might be 40-50 at this point. Like this dude is so good. He's stolen four bases or a base 4 games in a row. Then tonight he hit 2 home runs. I, I am at I am flabbergasted. I just want to give him all the praise right now because he is doing some stuff that I've never seen before. Cutting your strikeout rate in half at year 5 of your career when that should be stabilized. That's absurd. That should not happen, and he's making it happen anyway. Not to mention that Matt Olson is almost tied with Shohei Ohtani for the most homers in Major League Baseball on this team, and Ozzy Albies is suddenly on pace for 40 home runs. Okay, like the Braves
Oh,
are incredible, and they've got
oh,
I think
Orlando
12
Orlando
100
Arce,
WRC plus players.
Orlando Arcia has a 120 has a 820 OPS.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Yeah,
6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 players on their roster with at least 30 games played have a 100 WRC plus or greater. And all this is without Austin Riley playing like an MVP candidate like he did last year, without Michael Harris performing well like he did last year, without Dansby
both
Swanson.
by the way, both of Michael Harris and Austin Riley have homered tonight.
Oh, okay. Well, that's,
Like
you know,
they're the players that have struggled.
I just, dude, we're going on about the Braves. I know Damien's not here to stop it, so we're going to talk about him. But my goodness, and I think it's worth mentioning. I also want to note a big reason of why the Marlins have stepped forward this season is that one, their bullpen has been really, really good.
Yeah,
It's full of guys who are nasty, throwing sidearm, 97 plus. Tanner Scott's been good. They've had some other guys who are just really, really good in that bullpen. I'm
AJ Puck.
trying. Yeah, AJ Puck's been a very good
I
reliever
was
for them.
I was very critical of that trade when
Mm-hmm.
they made it for trading JJ Bleday, who had lost some of his prospect shine, but I still kind of believed would be a pretty good
Mm-hmm.
major leaguer. And I was very, I did not like that trade. And AJ
He's been
Puck's been
nasty.
awesome for them. Yeah,
Dylan Floro's been good again. He's very reliable
yeah,
back there, but they've had Huskar Brazaban, who's been really nasty. But the big one is Tanner Scott, right? He's their kind of their firearm guy who can come in and get lefties out in the middle of the lineup. He has the most innings, the most WAR on their in their bullpen. That is a big development that they've been able to put together a very strong bullpen. That combined with bringing up Yuri Perez, who has a 1.34 ERA and
yeah.
9 starts, has transformed this team. That's why they are where they are right now. He has been spectacular in June. He hasn't given up a run in 3 straight starts.
Yeah, he's been awesome, and also Jesus Luzardo, who the A's gave up on,
Mm-hmm.
and he started to show some signs last year. Well, he's been really good this year too. Like he's been
Yep.
part of this, and they're doing this without Sandy Alcantara pitching very well at all. I mean, he's got
Yep.
a 5+ ERA right now. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and you feel like, some of his peripherals show that he really has regressed some this year. But like, I think that most of his peripherals are showing him probably being like an upper threes ERA type pitcher right now.
Right.
So like, they've had some bad luck there. The one thing that does concern me about the Marlins going forward is just they just don't have much lineup depth. They've got some
Yep.
guys. Arias obviously has hit extremely well. I'm still so skeptical he's going to keep this pace up. He's hitting 397 right now. He actually struck out tonight, which is
Well,
crazy. It was only his 16th of the year, but and Jorge Soler has been really good for them, but they need some guys to step up. Segura hasn't been good. Chisholm's been hurt a lot, and they need him to step up some. This team's got the talent to where they could actually improve from within before before the deadline. And I do think that there's a chance this team tries to make a trade at the deadline to add a
Yeah.
bat. They've got so many young controllable pitchers that maybe even a big league to big league trade where they trade with the Cardinals or something and give up a pitcher and get a bat. That type of thing could be big for the Marlins. But definitely, I've liked what I've seen from them this year. I mean, they've got 61% playoff odds right now from
Yep.
Fangraphs, which is pretty remarkable. I mean, they're probably not going to have a chance in the division, but they would have a chance in just about any other division. And definitely an interesting team to watch. But the other two teams we'll talk about, and I'll let you go first on these because your team's playing one of them right now. But the Phillies are in third right now, and then the Mets.
Yeah. So the Phillies to me have been bitten by the injury has really plagued the Phillies. Not to mention the the construction of the roster is
Yep,
questionable,
it
and
is.
Aaron Nola especially is dealing drastically with having Kyle Schwarber play left field
Oh my
every day,
God.
Nick Castellanos play right field every day, right? And then, you're playing Alec Boehm at first, he's not a first baseman by trade. You don't really have a third baseman. This is Trey Turner's good at shortstop, but he's the only one, right? Like this is a team that's built around a lot of DHs playing the field. While I fought for Kyle Schwarber's fielding prowess back in the day when he was a younger lad, at this point he's a DH and he needs to not be playing the field. The problem is Bryce Harper's got an elbow injury and he can't play the field. So, Bryce Harper's elbow is clearly bothering him. He's not slugging. The Phillies are beating the Cubs right now, but it's a Jameson Taillon thing versus versus a
Yeah.
Phillies thing. I think. The other note that we have here is that the Mets are 35 and 43. Man, that is shocking. That is a team with a $400 million payroll. And while payroll isn't everything, like that's just clear
It,
evidence. You can't just buy your way to
you can't.
wins.
You can't, and that's really the case with both of these teams. The Phillies have just spent a ton in free agency that did not do a very good job developing in-house talent. They've had a little bit of some form of success lately with the likes of Bryson Stott and Alec Boehm, at least being fine big leaguers, but they've tried to just buy their way in. I mean, and Aaron Nola is also homegrown too, but like they've really just tried to buy their way in. And you mentioned Schwarber. He's got negative 16 defensive runs saved this year. Like, that is just shockingly bad. And he's also got negative 11 outs above average, or sorry, negative 12 outs above average. And we're not even like halfway through the season yet, or we're getting close to halfway through the season. Like, that's just an insanely bad number. And I
Yeah.
mean, he cost them a game the other day against the Braves where, it's like he just drops a fly ball to left field, takes a bad route. He's too slow to get to it, and he just dropped it. Like, it's just a bad. It's just a bad situation there with him. But I mean, the Phillies, the roster construction is not good. They're a team that they're snake bit by injuries, but a lot
Hmm.
of it's also just because they have zero depth. Like they just when you get beyond their expensive key players, they just don't have any. They don't have anybody else. Like
Right.
it's not. They don't have any. They don't have a farm system that for too much, and they don't have a bench. Like they're playing Cody Clemens at first because Reese Hoskins got hurt, and they could have added some kind of corner infield bat. It's like before the season, and they've spent so much money on a few key players that, and honestly, I mean, Kyle Schwarber's got negative WAR this year,
Yeah, he
so
hasn't been good.
it's been
Hitting home
it's been
runs, but
rough.
that's
He's
it.
hitting home runs, and that's it. And then, I mean, you talk about the Mets. That team is. I don't think I've ever seen a team lose games in as many different ways as the Mets are losing games right now.
Hmm.
It's really hard to believe. I mean, you had the other day where they had a walk single. They were up by I think they were up by 4 runs. They might have been up by 3 runs at the time. They had a walk single, walk error on a double play ball that got thrown in that got no outs. And then they had another walk, so they walked in a run. And then they had back-to-back hit by pitches to bring in the tying and winning and the go-ahead runs for the Phillies. Like they lost that game. Like they've lost games where they lost in Atlanta. They lost 3 games. They had a 3-run lead in 3 straight games. Lost all 3 of them. It's like the first time that's ever happened. Like the Mets are just losing games in so many different ways. The bullpen is not very good. They obviously miss Edwin Diaz, but they
Hmm.
just don't have a lot of depth there. Even if they had Edwin Diaz, they just don't have a lot of depth there. Like Robertson's been pretty good for them, but they just don't have a ton of guys. Their rotation just has they really are just two guys, and when you put
They're two
all
old
your
guys.
eggs, you put all your eggs in a 40-year-old and a 41-year-old, it's not going to go well, and it
Mm.
it just isn't. And they're paying them
I
they're paying them over 80
I
million
am right
dollars
there
between the
with
two.
you.
And the
Worth
fact of the
noting that
matter
Steve
is they have
Cohen.
to pay those guys
Oh,
that much money next year, and there ain't nobody that's going to take those contracts on. Like if they try to sell, so and then the lineup, I mean, last year their lineup was good, but they had a lot of guys who weren't hitting the ball very hard that had a very high BABIP. I mean, guys like, and I mean, Jeff McNeil's a good player, but like that's kind of the type of player he is. Like last year he ran a pretty high BABIP, but he just does not hit the ball hard. And
hmm.
the Mets have to get like 4 or 5 singles in a row, with the exception of Pete Alonso, who's hitting home runs. Like, and he's been hurt he's hurt for a few games, but Lindor hasn't been great. Like, and they seem like they're just stuck in the mud. Like they just seem like they have no life right now, and it's they're the New York media's on them.
Mm.
They are just an absolute dumpster fire right now. So I don't think they'll turn it around to the point of making the wild card. I know they still have 13% playoff odds on Fangraphs. I really don't see that happening. They already obviously they traded Eduardo Escobar, which is kind of a sell move. Although having Brett Beatty up probably is more
Yeah,
contributing to that than anything else.
yeah, they don't
But
need him.
right, but like I wouldn't be surprised if they sold pieces where they maybe can. Like I don't know, I don't remember what David Robertson signed his contract to, but maybe
Yeah,
him
he'll be.
yeah. I mean, like Tommy Pham was actually a really good 1 year signing that they made. Like that might be
He's
a
been
good
good.
piece to move. He's been good for them, so they might end up actually selling at the deadline, which is wild. But they won't sell everything because they just don't have that much to sell. Like they've got long term players and players on bad contracts, and then they've got just a couple of these little pieces. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there.
The Mets. Steve Cohen tweeted today that he was going to have a press conference before tomorrow's game, and that could be him announcing them selling. That could be him announcing that it's his fault. That could be him announcing that like Buck Showalter's fired. A lot of different things that could be, right? It could be him announcing that they're not done yet and that he's going to go out and
Yeah,
try to fix the
that's
team.
that's going to be
You
what
know,
it is. I
and,
mean,
well, there's a lot of things it could be, and I think that'll be worth keeping our eye on. We'll certainly mention that the next time we get together, but um, you know the way this is trending is that the Mets are going to be selling, but the selling that they can do is pretty limited, right? As you
yep,
mentioned, the one I've been wondering about, and I've been tweeting about it because it's a perfect fit for the Cubs, is that if they popped Pete Alonso onto the block,
I
I'm
don't.
willing
That's
to
not going to
bet they
happen.
would get some very very hefty calls. We've mentioned that a lot of different teams need a bat. We're getting to more teams that are going to need a bat. If they are going to kickstart a rebuild, that Pete Alonso's only got one more year left on his deal after this year. That's one way to do it, right? And that's first base. It's pretty standard that you can replace at first base. Getting a bat out there is certainly a possibility. Pete Alonso's got a 399 xWOBA.
Well, I
So
highly, highly doubt the Mets sell multi-year guys that are good. Like they
I
might
don't
try to.
disagree with you.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be absolutely shocked because Steve Cohen might not think he can fix the team this year, but I bet he thinks he can fix it in the offseason.
Yeah.
And
I,
he's not going to want to get rid of Pete Alonso, who he'll probably want to re-sign, because the way that Steve Cohen operates, he operates the team like he's a fan, which he
mm-hmm.
is,
He's a fan
and
of Pete Alonso. Yeah.
Pete Alonso is a fan favorite there. He's going to re-sign Pete Alonso. I mean, that's probably what's
Right.
going to happen. Like, and it's he runs it like a fan. That's why he signed real big names like Verlander and Scherzer, even though they're old and coming off of injuries and stuff, and it hadn't worked out. Well, Pete Alonso is a guy who he's a fan favorite. They're going to sign him. Like I'll be shocked if they don't. So that'll be the Mets will be it'll be interesting to see what they do at the deadline. But the last team here, the Nationals, are in last place. They've had some interesting developments this year. Mackenzie Gore's been pretty good, I guess.
Yeah. He's been good.
Josiah Gray's been pretty good for them too, which it's nice to have that 1-2 in their rotation. CJ Abrams has been really bad, which kind of sucks for them. That former high end prospect. He just hasn't had a good year.
He reminds me of Victor
He
Robles. It's
he reminds
really
me a
good
little.
glove, can't hit, man.
The glove for Abrams this year has been every time I'm pretty sure, and it might just be I haven't really looked at his numbers defensively, but it might just be a Braves. Yeah, he's got a -4 defensive value on Fangraphs right now with the glove. Like he's got that reputation, but man, it's been rough this year. -10 outs above average for at shortstop. Like
He is a 22-year-old
you
playing in
know,
Major League Baseball.
yeah,
Like I would say you
it's
can't give up on a guy like that yet,
I'm
but
not
he
saying give
is.
up. I'm not saying
Yeah,
give up. I'm just saying like the development there is not good right now. Like you do not like what how he's developed. He's got an 80 WRC plus. He does have good base running metrics. That's really all he's done well this year. So, um, but you got the Mackenzie Gore and Josiah Gray being decent. Luis Garcia has been all right at times. I think. One guy that I think is really interesting to look at, and I saw a post. I forgot where it was at, but people were talking about Lane Thomas as maybe being
he's
a
been
trade candidate,
he's
and
been
he's
really
been
good.
he's been legitimately really good. Offensively, a 130 WRC plus. You do worry a little bit about the profile. He strikes out a bit, does not walk much, and has a 369 BABIP right now. But he does have good speed, which means
And
he
if he
probably can run a pretty good BABIP. And he seems like a guy that maybe, and he's got a couple years of control, but he is past like what you would expect. He's going to be beyond the Nationals window, and he's not really a guy you kind of
yeah,
expect to be an extension, but long term solution. So it might be interesting to see with Lane Thomas if they might move him and get something interesting back for him. He's got 1.7 WAR this year so far, which is really good. So we'll see what happens with him.
they will be moving Jeimer Candelario. I
Oh
think
yeah,
that
yeah,
is that's the obvious one. And
yeah,
you
and
take a
he's been
look at
really good too.
the baseball savant pages on both. Thomas not super interesting. Candelario really good in the field,
Yeah,
which is not something that anyone
I
expected back
know.
when he was a prospect. They thought he was going to be kind of a bad fielder, and then he's got some good exit velocities. He's a solid hitter all around, just the type of guy teams are going to want. So, of all the guys that we've mentioned, Candelario almost definitely getting moved. Thomas maybe, but I can't see a
Yeah,
team giving enough to get the Nationals to kind of opt out of that couple years of
yeah,
control that he has. So you won't get anything big for him, but maybe a low tier pitching prospect. But then that might not be worth it. So let's move on to the NL Central because we spent way too much time on the
yeah,
NL East. But the NL East might be the most interesting division in baseball, honestly.
yeah.
And that's us saying that. Damien would say it's the NL West,
Mm.
but we'll get there. NL Central, Milwaukee Brewers and Cincinnati Reds both have 41 wins. Brewers have half a game in the bank based on losses, but they're about to lose to the Mets tonight, 6-0 over there. So consider that tied between the Brewers and the Reds, slightly over 500, 41 and 38. Cubs are at 37 and 39, 3 games back. The Pirates are at 35 and 42, 5.5 back, but they have dropped drastically. Got swept by the Cubs twice in the last 2 weeks. Cardinals are at 32 and 45, still last in this division by a solid margin. Matt, every team is still technically alive, but it's starting to look like a three-horse race.
Yeah, I'll let you talk more about this division than
Yeah,
obviously with being the Cubs, but the Brewers,
cannot hit.
they can't hit, and they can't. I think that I probably still favor them in the division because at some point their pitching will get healthier. I think Brandon Woodruff coming back will help them a lot. They've missed. I mean, Corbin Burns, I think, will eventually get going. Um, and it's just they're going to have to add somebody at the deadline. At the plate, like they're going to have to add maybe two hitters, and they might add around the edges there, but I don't know, man. They don't have a single hitter with an 800 OPS right now, and it's just it's rough, offensively for them right now. And you look at the Reds. That's the team that I think is so much fun to watch.
Mm-hmm.
And I watched the Braves played a series against them this weekend. The Reds came into that series with an 11-game winning streak, and they won the first game. It's the only game the Braves have lost in like 2 weeks, and it was 11-10. Ellie De La Cruz hit for the cycle. Joey Votto hit 2 home runs. He had come back last week and he's hit 3 or 4 home runs since he's come back. The Reds are really fun. It's really a shame because right now they have a lot of pitching injuries. Like the
Mm-hmm.
starting pitching's their issue. They have a lot of pitching injuries. Hunter Green's been on the IL. It sounds like he's probably not going to be out too long, but Nick Lodolo's been on the IL. We'll see maybe when he comes back eventually. Andrew Abbott's come up and been good, but um, you know, eh, like they need some pitching.
Yeah.
I think this team with their offense, I don't know how sustainable it is. They do have a lot of guys running high K rates with a high BABIP, but they do hit the ball really hard. Ellie De La Cruz hits it hard. Matt McLean just keeps hitting barrels.
Yeah.
Um,
He's
it
been
is,
impressive.
yeah, like he really has. And I mean, but and a lot of the other all the prospects they brought up have really been good. Like
They really
Spencer
have.
Steer's been good.
He has.
I mean, it's really just been everybody. I mean, the guys that they had kept from the last few years, that were pretty good, like maybe potential cornerstones for the future type guys. Jonathan India being one of them has been really good. Stevenson's been not as good, but he's been
Yeah,
all
he's had
right.
he's had some
He's
tough.
he's had some injuries and some tough luck and everything, but I mean, this team is. I think they're pretty legit offensively. The bullpen could use some work. Alexis Diaz has been really good, but the rest of the bullpen could use some work. I do think this is a team that if they can stay afloat for the next couple of weeks, which with their offense, it's kind of hard to believe they could,
Right.
especially in this division, they might swing a trade. This is a team that to watch out for their sneaky aggressive team sometimes. Remember a few years ago they
Mm-hmm.
traded for Trevor Bauer at the deadline when they didn't really need to. They went out. They've signed contracts too to players like they signed Mike Moustakas and Nick Castellanos a few years ago. Like when this team's kind of smelled it and kind of felt like they might have a chance, they haven't just sat on their hands completely. Like I know they're not
Right.
never going to run a very high payroll, but they haven't just completely sat on their hands. So it's a team that I do think will be interesting to watch for, and they sneaky could be in this at the end. And I think I kind of start feeling like the Cubs might be in this at the end as well. But you can talk about them.
So I've been saying all along that I would much rather be chasing the Reds than the Brewers. I was always kind of skeptical about the Reds. Starting to reverse that opinion. I am scared of the Reds offense. It is very strong. We didn't even mention TJ Friedel, Jake
Yeah,
Fraley. They've both been super
Jake
good.
Fraley kept Jake Fraley hit like 4 home runs this weekend.
Yeah,
I was like I knew he had a good year, but I was like, man, this guy's actually like really good.
the thing that's so dangerous about the Reds is that they believe. They
Yeah,
believe they can
they
go out
do.
and win that division, and that scares the hell out of me because I think they are. I think they're the division favorite right now. If I had to put it on them, right? The Brewers are a team that everyone has kind of consistently felt like is the best team. I think it's the Reds at this point, but especially if they believe and the ownership believes and gets behind them and the front office gets behind them and they make a move to improve that pitching staff, that they're going to be scary. The Brewers. I mean, Willie Adames has been just dreadful.
Yeah,
Christian Yelich has experienced a bit of a renaissance. You mentioned 800 OPS. Christian Yelich is at 798. I mean,
yeah,
he
he's
has
close.
he
He's
has
close.
been an 800 OPS guy all
Yeah,
season, but Yelich has been strong this year. He's just been by himself, right? Joey Weimer's been in and out. He's been maybe their best hitter besides Yelich, and Adames has been bad. They really haven't seen anybody else step up, right? William Contreras has been okay. Getting there, their pitching hasn't been good. Colin Ray is one of their starters, and like he's got like
I,
a 5 ERA.
he
Like,
shut down the Mets yesterday. It was
the,
hilarious.
well, that's a Mets problem.
Oh, I know. That's the point.
Right. The Cubs are interesting because the Cubs' strength is not what I expected it to be. The starting pitching has been fantastic, except for Jameson Taillon. Kyle, Kyle Hendricks has been really good since he came back, which was all of June. He has the longest no-hit bid in baseball so far. Justin Steele and Marcus Stroman have both been absolutely spectacular for going on a calendar year, to the point that you're getting confident those guys win the game every time they come out, and if they don't, something's wrong. Like on Sunday when Stroman pitched and had a blister and had to come out of the game early. That's about the only way he doesn't throw a quality start and win the game at this point. So, those guys are just pitching super super well. The Drew Smiley's been good. Hendricks coming back and having that renaissance is so nice. They've got some pitching depth. They've got a bunch of guys they could really trust to take over that Taillon spot. They don't need to make a move for a starting pitcher, which is exactly not where I thought they would be to start the season. I thought for sure they would have to find a starting pitcher at this point in the season. and there wouldn't really be one available, and we'd be looking at the White Sox for a pitcher or something. Nope, they need some bullpen help, and they need a bat. And if they got that, they might actually be a kind of a dangerous team. Right now they're hovering around 500. They've got a Pythagorean record that's way better than that because they keep losing on the margins. We talked about this back in the manager episode. They've won a lot of games since then. For what it's worth, they've swept the Pirates twice. They've gotten themselves back in the division. I like where they're at, but man, I really would feel more comfortable if they had maybe one more really good reliever and a bat. They need somebody, and I don't know who it is, but I hope they can figure it out because they can't keep running Trey Mancini at first base, man. He is so bad out there.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you look at the and I was watching the London game on Sunday where
Mm-hmm.
with the Trey Mancini, man, that was oof. But but yeah, I mean the thing that does, if I was a Cubs fan, that would concern me is that they have really outperformed their peripherals on the mound. I think that that's something that,
That's how they built the
especially
team,
with a
though.
lot of the names. I know it is, but and the defense that they've got, and especially up the middle, helps them because I think that
Yeah,
if you look at second base, Nico Horner's a good
Horner.
defender. Swanson's a
Hmm.
great defender at short. Like, I think that center field,
Talkman
Bellinger
hasn't been bad, but
when Bellinger's healthy, he's a really
yeah,
good one. But like, I don't know if I don't know what you think if he's going to play center field any this year because of the injury, and they've put him at first base because they don't think he can play the outfield right now. Like, we'll see what happens there. But the Cubs, they have a 3.77 starters ERA. They have a 4.40 xFIP for their starters. I know that they get a lot of weak contact, and that helps. But that is a pretty significant change. And I mean, I do think that there's some overperformance from some players. Like, I don't think Christopher Morel is going to keep up what he's done. I think he's good,
I disagree with
but
you. But
he,
maybe
I
not
mean,
this much. But
yeah, I mean,
he's made some significant
yeah,
changes.
yeah.
He's
I mean,
also
he's got a
24 years old.
yeah. I mean, no, I'm not saying he's not a good player and has the potential, but he's just I don't know. I mean, I don't feel super confident in him being a 157 WRC plus guy. Like Miguel
Maybe not.
Amaya too. Like, he's got a 143 WRC plus in
That's on the
17
strength of a lot of
games.
hit by pitches. By the way,
Yeah,
he's got like 8
404.
hit by
Yeah,
pitches.
I was gonna
Um,
say, like, you
he's been
know,
good.
yeah, it'll be interesting. The Cubs have done a really good job of bringing in some guys who aren't are pretty unheralded this year that have
Hmm.
kind of clicked a little bit, like Mike Talkman being one, a couple of those pitchers you mentioned.
Hmm.
Um, that's been a big help for
Julian
them.
Merriweather is the
Julian
big one.
Merriweather, yeah,
Yeah.
it's another one. Like, they've been pretty good at that this year. Can you imagine where this team would be if Jason Hayward was still there? No, I'm just kidding.
It's
But
funny, right?
because
Because
he's been so good for the Dodgers, but
they've
you
had
know,
the problem is for every Julian Merriweather or Mike
yeah,
Talkman, there's an Eric Hosmer or an Andrelton
Patrick
Simmons
Wisdom.
or a Wisdom earned his opportunity
Oh
this year
yeah,
and hit
I'm
12
not
home
saying,
runs in
yeah,
April. But once he's stopped hitting,
yeah,
he's been so disastrous, right? And then there's a Trey Mancini, and then there's they just
yeah,
keep, and there's a Michael
yeah,
Fulmer who's been good of late, but it just isn't what you wanted.
yeah,
I'm frustrated with that aspect, but at least we're not who the two teams we're going to come up on and talk about. The Pirates and the Cardinals are in really bad spots now.
yeah.
Pirates are probably going to have to sell. Their team is just
Oh yeah, they're
falling
just
apart at the seams,
the
and the Cardinals are a disaster.
yeah. So and one more point that I want to make on the Cubs real quick is that I think that it's going to be very interesting to see what they do at the deadline because they're 3 games back, and you would think they probably buy being that close, but it'll be interesting to see what they buy and how they buy. Like, because I think that there's not much belief that they're really a World Series contender. I mean, they could win this
Hmm.
division because the division's so bad, and it kind of goes back to that AL Central debate too that we talked about. But or they seem like they don't have a lot of direction from the front office. Like, where do they want to go? Like, are they contending right now? Are they trying to be like a World Series contender right now? Or are they just trying to be decent? Like, are in the future, like, are they gonna, what's the next 3 or 4 years gonna look like? They seem like they've been signing some 2 or 3 year deals, like Marcus Stroman was, and a couple of 1 year deals, like Cody Bellinger. I mean, it's kind of been confusing to me what their primary like direction is. But either way, it'll be interesting. And then moving on, the Pirates, they're still a ways away. I mean, they're
Yeah.
a couple years away from being really good. They've had some interesting, you know, things happen for them this year. Um, I think that Jack Sawinski being pretty good has been nice for them. He's cooled off. Uh, I think that O'Neal Cruz being out for so long has really hurt this team. That was kind of that
Mm,
exciting key player who he really needed to just take off for them to have a really good shot to surprise this year. And maybe they end up getting a couple of those young guys. I know they called up Nick Gonzalez somewhat recently. They called up Henry Davis. They're going to get some looks at those guys. And this team's kind of they've shown it at times where they feel pretty good about some of their young pieces. But you look at the Cardinals, and they'll definitely sell. You look at the Cardinals, and man, I just don't know what they're gonna do. Like
yeah.
they're
They're
this division is so bad that they're not like it's unlikely that they make the playoffs, but it's not impossible. They have a 10% division win odds on Fangraphs. I don't think they're going to win the division. Don't get me wrong, but I just it'll be interesting. They seems like they've just kind of made their what they've got. I mean, because the roster's poorly built because they just believed that their pitching was better than it is, and they've got some aging players on pretty big contracts. I mean, Paul Goldschmidt's still really, really good, but you're kind of this is the year you're banking on winning with Paul Goldschmidt because in the next few years that contract's going to start to become a little bit of a overpay because he'll decline as he gets older. Arenado's kind of similar in the fact that like this is the first half of a big contract to a really good player, and he'll start to. I mean, he's shown it a little bit this year. I mean, I know his numbers have bounced back, but he's not the same guy he was last year. And I mean, they're just. I mean, they just it feels like they've totally mismanaged Jordan Walker is another thing.
oh yeah.
Like he
Oh
does
yeah.
not need to be playing the outfield. He is so bad. I know he's young and he hasn't played there much. He is so bad in the outfield. I just can't imagine a world where he ends up being good there. Like
Yeah.
and it's a team that like honestly, if I were them, I would try to move Paul Goldschmidt, put Jordan Walker back at his natural position in the corner infield, put him at first base, and like I don't know. I don't really love their farm system. I think they've got guys who have tools or toolsy, but they don't have a lot of like I don't think they have a ton of skill, baseball skill. Like Mason Wynn's a guy who just he throws the ball through the first baseman's glove and he can hit the ball really hard, but he just doesn't have a great approach at the plate. It feels like they have a lot of those types of guys in their farm system too, and they
Hmm.
just don't have any pitching to come up. Like their pitching's just not
Yeah.
the pitching at the major leagues level is not good, and it just doesn't feel like they have many pieces in the minors to come in as pitchers.
One
So,
of their one of their pieces that did come in was Matthew Liberatore, who
oh
pitched
yeah,
on
and
Saturday and
he's
got
not
blown up
good.
by the
Yeah,
Cubs.
I mean, and
Um,
he's not good.
here's what I've got for you as we close out the NL Central. Uh, I guarantee you couldn't order the teams if you didn't look at it already. You couldn't order the teams by run differential in descending order. You couldn't do it. You wouldn't get it right.
Yep.
Cubs are first
Yeah.
as the only team with a positive run differential right now at 32. Second is the
Yep.
Cardinals with the
Yeah.
negative 16 run differential. Reds or the Brewers are third, Reds are fourth, Pirates are fifth. Um, that is mind blowing to me
Yep.
that this
It's
division
crazy.
is. It seems like the Cubs have played their way into third place from what could be first place, right? And the Brewers are not hitting, and the Reds are on the come up. The Cardinals they should be in contention and they aren't, and that feels like a managerial and a front office issue.
Yeah.
So let's go over to the NL West. We'll spend some time there as well because Damien would probably argue this is the most interesting division in baseball. The Diamondbacks are 47 and 32. They are almost tied with the Rangers in record. I would not have expected that going into June. Um, the Giants are 44 and 34, 2.5 games out. The Dodgers are 43 and 34, 3 games out. The Padres are 37 and 41, 9.5 games out. The Rockies are 31 and 49, 16.5 out. Diamondbacks, Matt. My goodness.
Yeah. The Diamondbacks have been really good. I mean, Corbin for the Diamondbacks to be good this year, we knew they had some pieces. They had
Yep.
the trade that they made in the offseason.
Yep.
for
That had to hit.
that had to hit, and they had to have Corbin Carroll come out and immediately be like a stud. And Corbin Carroll's been every single bit of that. If it wasn't for Ronald Acuna just being like on another planet right now, Corbin Carroll would be the front runner for MVP. I think like he's been
Yeah.
that good. Or I mean, we keep saying that, but we can't forget Arias if he somehow kept up what he's doing right now. Like, there's going to be he's not nearly as valuable, even if he hits 400 as Acuna or Corbin Carroll, but the voters would think he is. Like,
I
that's the thing.
I wouldn't I couldn't possibly give him MVP for 400 over Acuna's season right
Oh,
now.
I
Especially
agree.
if
Like,
Acuna doubled his numbers, if he played to, if we're at like 80 81 games, if he
yeah.
doubled Acuna's numbers, he would be just about 40-70
Yeah.
for home runs, stolen bases.
God.
You can't give the MVP to somebody else if somebody does that.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree. I agree. I agree. I'm just saying that I think
but
that there's a lot of old fashioned, writers that would vote Arias. I mean, but either way, it's not going to happen. Arias is not going to still or not going to hit 400, and
yeah,
Acuna is probably not going to go 40-70. I won't say that's impossible at the
he's
rate
on
he's
pace
at.
for it.
I'm not saying it's impossible. Well, I mean, Arias is at the pace to hit 400, or he's hitting
397.
397, so
Yeah.
he's close. But I mean, Acuna, like I can't imagine that he ends up 40-70. Like he will slow down one of those. His home run pace will slow down a little bit, or his stolen base pace. 40-60 is not out of the question for him. Like,
That's
and I think that it's just insane. Like,
you. That's got to be MVP. Anyway, we're not talking
yeah,
about the
I agree.
Diamondbacks
I
anymore.
agree. Yeah,
Lourdes Gurriel's been really, really good for
yeah,
this
he
team.
has.
Hitting, he got a 484 slugging, 117 WRC plus, been every bit the trade piece they wanted. And Gabriel Moreno's been really good
Yeah,
defensively as a catcher. He's been good at managing their pitching staff. Worth noting that their pitching staff includes Zach Gallen, who before the season we said was maybe a Cy Young favorite.
yep,
But Merrill Kelly's been really good, and Andrew
solid.
Chapin's been solid at the back end. They've got Scott McGough as well, who's been solid.
Yep,
This is a team it feels weird, right? They're missing something. There's no
pitching.
one behind Zach Gallen.
Yep. Well, Merrill Kelly's legitimately been really solid. Like his
Yeah,
peripherals aren't 3.22 ERA peripherals, but they're good. He's been a solid pitcher. I
yeah.
agree though. This team needs some help in that bullpen and just rotation depth. If you look at their lineup, they also have some guys who, I mean, I don't think Geraldo Perdomo is going to have a 134 WRC plus the rest of the season. Um,
We keep saying that, but he keeps
yeah,
maintaining
well,
it.
he had like a 165 last time we checked, so it's
he
you
he's
know
been
he's
legitimately
he's
strong.
good,
Good. The
and he was a
approach
good
is there
the
now.
approach is there, and he was a good prospect. I mean, he was a
Yeah,
top 100 guy, but I mean Corbin Carroll, I wouldn't be shocked if he kept up what he's done.
yeah,
Christian Walker, the 130 WRC plus, elite defense at first base. Ketel Marte's been really really good, which
yeah. When we
I
talked about them before, we said Ketel Marte's got to come out and
yeah
have a really strong season, and we said
like
Corbin Carroll does.
yeah, and some I mean like the other big move that they made, or one of the moves they made in the offseason that was kind of under the radar. Evan Longoria has been really good. He's
Yeah.
got a 116 WRC plus. He's not playing every day. He's been solid for them. So, this is a team that I think is you definitely like what we've seen for them in the lineup. Some of their rotation, they are missing some depth in that pitching. And I think that they're a team that could make some moves at the deadline. I don't really believe that they are gonna unless they make some really good moves. I can't imagine them winning the division over the Giants and Dodgers. Like I really really like the Giants. I really like
Hmm.
what the Giants have done this year. Like
That's interesting. Yeah, I think I'm the opposite. I think I'm
yeah
Team Diamondbacks here. I
yeah
want the superstar, right? The Corbin Carroll is so much more important, and the Giants do not have a Corbin Carroll. Let's get
they
that
don't.
clear.
Oh
Tyro
no.
Estada's been really good. Their most impressive player is rather easily Lamonte Wade, who's striking out exactly as much as he's walking, and he's striking
Yeah,
out 18% of the time. So he's also walking
he's
18% of the time.
walking a lot.
He's been very, very,
J,
very dangerous at the
JD
plate.
Davis has been really good. Um,
D- yeah.
you look at them, and I believe in the depth that they have, especially in the pitching staff. I
Hmm.
mean, look at Logan Webb, Alex Cobb, Anthony DeSclafani are all really good, and then you look at their bullpen's got depth too. Camilo
Yeah.
Doval, obviously great. Tyler Rogers has been really good. John Brebbia has been really good. Luke Jackson, who came back,
He's
they signed him.
back.
He's back. I've always been a huge fan of Luke Jackson. I
Yep.
loved him when he
And
was a
he's back
Brave,
and he's pitching
and
good.
he's pitching really. He's only pitched in 9 games so far. He's pitched really good. He did go out of the game the other day with I think it was a back, but it wasn't his elbow that he had surgically repaired. It was back. I think he shouldn't be out too long. So I believe in their. I do believe in this team's. I believe in their pedigree too. The Giants over the last several years have done a really good job mixing and matching, and I feel like down the stretch that depth is going to really help them. And the Dodgers are obviously really good, but I worry a little bit about their pitching right now.
Yeah,
I
that's the
mean,
worry for sure.
it's just I just I don't believe in Tony Gonsolin to be really really good. He's got a 3.30 ERA. He's got a 5.01 xFIP. I don't believe in. I mean, they've had all these injuries. Some guys coming back. It's hard to say when Clayton Kershaw how much he stays healthy. Like it just
Yeah.
it,
Kershaw does always take a break midseason for the
exactly.
back.
And the bullpen's been good as it always is for them, but I don't know. The lineup's good. They've got the star power. Freddie Freeman's obviously been great this year. Mookie Betts has been great this year. Will Smith has been great this year. You go
Will
beyond
Smith
that,
is Will Smith is
he's been on
hunting
a
best catcher in
yeah,
baseball status.
he's been on a tear lately. And
JD Martinez has been good too. He's a good
right,
signing. He's good for a lot
he
of power.
has. The thing about JD Martinez is that he's hit for a lot of power, but the approach is gone, and he's
Yeah,
striking
but
out thirty
that's
percent of the time. If he continues, I don't know if he will continue to hit for this much power. I think teams will start to exploit him a little bit more. I saw some things about how he's changed his approach, where he's just absolutely murdering fastballs right now, and he's been very swing happy in certain situations. And I think teams will start to figure that out. But I mean, they've had a lot of overperform. Like James Outman has a
yeah.
346 BABIP still, and I just I don't know, man. I think they're a good team. The Dodgers are always good. The one thing that everyone seems to think about the Dodgers is that they will add at the deadline, which they might. It depends, but I mean, easier said than done this year. Like
Yeah, there's
adding
just
at the
not a
deadline
lot.
is easier said than done. There's just not a lot out there. Like they could add Lucas Giolito. He's a Southern California guy, sure. Like, is Lucas Giolito going to make this team like way better? I don't think they're going to catch. I don't think they're going to catch fire enough to be the favorite in the league. They do have the easiest strength of schedule remaining in the National League, which helps them a lot. But definitely an interesting team. The star power, if they stay healthy and continue to produce, I think they'll be there at the end. They'll at least make the playoffs. Then the last team that is controversial, I guess, that we'll talk about, I guess, the Padres. What do you think of the Padres right now?
So Fernando Tatis had the best June of anybody.
Golly,
He
he's been
he
so
was
good.
he was June MVP, basically, and all that. And Juan Soto's had an incredible June. Right? He's back to being Juan Soto,
Yep.
425 OBP. His walk rate matches his K rate at 21%. So that's
A
absurd.
lot of walks.
Up to 14 homers too. So the power's back. He's over 500 slugging. Right? Juan Soto's being Juan Soto. The rest of the lineup is gone.
Yeah.
The Padres depth is so it's we talked about it with the Braves, right? How many they had 12 players at over a 100 WRC plus. The Padres are at like 3.
Yeah.
Um, it is brutal right now for the Padres offensively, and they've got good starting pitching, but their bullpen's been a little bit spotty at times, right? I mean, Josh Hader's good, Steven Wilson's good. Other than that, right, they give up a lot of runs middle of the game, and they do not have the offense to kind of buoy that. Bogarts has been really really slumping since the beginning of the season, down to 106 WRC plus. Machado has been a lot better of late since he got back from the injury, but has still overall not been what you need from the big star third baseman. But all that, it, Jay Cronenworth's been bad, right? Like this team's just underperformed
Yeah.
across the board, and you can't just go to the playoffs on the strength of Fernando Tatis and Juan Soto, despite what the Padres owner might wish.
Yeah, I agree. Like you come into the season, and the thing about the Padres has always been they just completely ignored having a deep roster to have 4 superstars,
Hmm.
and and their pitching is they're the way that they have built this pitching staff is weird.
Yeah.
First off, that the lineup, like, you came in with four superstars, and I mean, if you had to have all four of them stay healthy all year and produce at the same level that they always have produced all year for the Padres to go. And Manny Machado has taken a step back. I have a hard time believing that Manny Machado is really regressing that much, but because he's only 30 and he's been so good. But the Statcast data, a lot of the peripherals really don't like him this year. And last year they showed some red flags in his chase rates and stuff. So I don't know what's going on there. Xander Bogaerts has had some for a little while now. Has had some things in his batted ball profile that have been, not great. Although he's been an above average hitter and a really good defender. He's been a good player for them. But
Yeah.
Hassan Kim's been really good for them, especially defensively. But um, yeah, I mean, beyond that though, like Gary Sanchez is their fifth best player right now, or sixth best player.
Yeah.
Like
That's your big problem. They can't
Rufnet
find anybody
Rufnet
else.
Odor, Gary Sanchez and Odor have more WAR than Trent Grisham, Jake Cronenworth, Austin Nola combined. Like, and then your DH spot is literally old Nelson Cruz and old Matt Carpenter.
Matt Carpenter. Yeah.
It's just not a good. This is just not a good team.
What you look at here, and especially for Manny Machado, right? So 2016 onward, WRC plus. 2016, and he had a 131 WRC plus. 2017, 102. 2018, 141. 2019, 109. 2020, 150. 2021, 122. 2022, 152. 2023, he's at 94 right now. This is just odd year Manny Machado.
Yeah,
Is where I'm at,
it is
right? He has
interesting.
an insane year, he has a bad year. He has an insane year, he has an okay year. He has an insane year, he has an okay year. We're on the okay year. But he's not the only reason, right? Like you said, and Joe Musgrove hasn't been that good, and he kind of came off an injury early in the season. You Darvish is older, but Michael Walker's their best pitcher right now. Like that
Yeah.
can't be where they're
Well,
at.
yeah, and that's where I question, and we've talked about the sellers and stuff a lot. I don't think this team can sell
No, they can't.
because
They can't. They have to go for it.
and the reason is because they have so many contracts that are long term and are gonna be bad contracts eventually. Like, I don't think there's any doubt that Xander Bogaerts and Manny Machado at some point are gonna be way overpays at their point. They have made their bet, and we need to be really good these next 2, 3, 4 years while these guys are still in their
Yeah,
primes, because after that, this is not a team that can support Steve Cohen type payrolls, even though they can support a high
right.
payroll apparently. This is a team that it's gonna Juan Soto will probably be gone, or I don't think they're gonna extend him. Like this, they have to be good this year, and then like they paid you Darvish a 5-year contract at age 36, like, or 6-year contract or something. Like he's paid till he's 42 years old. Like I mean, and he hasn't been very good this year. His peripherals are better than his ERA, which is encouraging for the future for him. But I mean, they've built this team so weird,
Right. You got Seth Lugo in the
like
starting
Seth.
rotation.
Yeah, I mean Seth and Nick Martinez is another guy who was kind of a reliever that they signed to be a
Hmm.
starter, and obviously this year he's mainly been a reliever. But this is a
They've
weird
got a
team.
they've got a cluster of just kind of random guys
Yeah,
behind a strong group at the top of the
yeah,
rotation, and then the strong group hasn't been
yeah,
strong.
yeah.
I don't know. I don't know
When,
what to tell you.
yeah, well, when you're a team like the Padres, with this payroll, if you're going to sign these gigantic contracts like they have, you have to be able to add around the edge. You have to you can't just support the payroll of big contracts. You have to have a high enough payroll to support big contracts and be able to bring in guys and keep guys around that are, more of the depth pieces on the edges. And the Padres seem like they've just made their bed in, like, we're going to spend big on these big name players, and then the rest of it is going to be what we can find. And it seems to be what's kind of happened with them this year. And we'll see. I do think there's enough talent on this team where they can turn it around. Um, there's some signs that this team is better than they've played, but man, like, it's 37-41 is for this team is rough. We'll see what happens. And I would be shocked if AJ Preller was on the hot seat. That guy has made some bad moves in his career as a GM. Like,
And I don't think a lot of these moves that we've mentioned are bad, they're not working right now,
Yeah.
right? I think you could have, we before the season we were calling this team like or at least some of us were calling this team a World Series team. I
Yeah.
thought I thought it was,
Yep.
but we're seeing what happens when just that little bit of natural regression with having a pitching staff that's almost collectively over 30 plus a group of younger or a group of 30 plus guys, Machado's 30, Bogart's 31, all those guys are kind of regressing just a bit, and then some just the guys that they collected around them didn't perform right. The
Yeah.
Odors, the Cronenworths, the Sanchez, all those guys are just not performing.
Yeah.
They couldn't find a catcher, right? Just so many problems
Well,
with their approach to the offseason when they went and signed a shortstop when Fernando Tatis could have probably filled in at
yeah.
shortstop, right?
Or
Like,
I mean, Ha-Sung Kim. I mean,
yeah, or yeah, Hassan Kim,
yeah,
yeah, like they didn't have to
yeah,
get Bogarts. That money and that roster spot could have been allocated better,
yeah.
but they went for it. I
They were
like that they go for it,
yeah.
but it's not working.
The ownership stepped in here, and they were desperate to get a superstar player. You
Hmm.
saw it in the offseason. They're like, we got to sign Trey Turner. We got to sign Aaron Judge. And then they kept going down the list until they found, oh yeah, well
Hmm.
there's Xander Bogaerts. We can sign him to a gigantic contract that is probably an overpay. So I think that's kind of what we saw here. But either way, I mean, we'll see what happens with this team. One last note: they traded Austin Nola a couple years ago. They traded Ty France and Andres Munoz for him, I believe.
Right, and they're
Like,
two of the
I mean,
stars
that's the
in
type
in
of
Seattle.
moves that's a lot of the type of moves that AJ Preller has made in his career that just were not smart moves. Like
Hmm.
they also traded Max Fried for Justin Upton. So for 1 year of
Hmm.
Justin Upton. So like there's a lot of moves that was AJ Preller. There's a lot of moves AJ Preller has made that just did not work. So um we'll see. We'll see what happens here.
Last team, the Rockies. Nobody
Oof.
knows what they're doing, and
Hey, they're
that's
selling.
maybe
They
they
did.
traded Mike Moustakas, but
There you go.
is that a sell? I mean, did
I
anyone
mean,
really want Mike Moustakas?
he might
To
be the
be
most he might
determined.
have been the most desirable player on the Rockies, so to be
So,
fair.
I do wonder if we how many teams do we say, oh, they need a bat, they need a bat? How many will any of those teams go requesting Ryan McMahon's services? And could the Rockies finally decide maybe we should probably invest in some young prospects and trade some of these guys who've been, Ryan McMahon's like a 100 to 110 WRC plus guy, but historically a very good glove at third base. I wonder if a team hunting a bat wouldn't be able to pry him away from the Rockies for a couple of prospects.
It'll be interesting. I don't I just I don't see the Rockies trading Ryan McMahon just because of what they've done in the past, but we'll
Right,
see if that might happen. I think I mean if they're smart, they'd trade a couple of their relievers and they'd
right.
trade CJ Crone. Well, even though I don't think he's even valuable, but they would
Crone
trade,
Crone wouldn't go
you
for
know,
anything right
yeah,
now.
Bard. They would trade Bard and they would trade Bird and they would trade Lawrence maybe if they were a good
Bard is sitting on a 771 walks
yeah
per nine, just in case you were wondering. He's got a 140
it,
ERA, but 525
yeah. I mean I
Lawrence has a really high walk
Bird
rate
and
too.
Lawrence have been well, they've been and also they're playing in cores, so some of that
Yeah,
you got to factor in. But
Brad Hand has been good.
Brad Hand's
He'll
another
be
one. Yep,
he'll be available,
he
I
will.
think, and that's the
You
one
know,
that I think will move.
well,
But
yeah, you never know. I mean, the Rockies might sign him to a 2 year extension, but I don't know. I mean, that team is
we never know
weird.
what's going on with them.
Yeah, but we'll see.
All right, let's jump into player of the week here before we sign off. Do you have a player of the week? Did you take a look at it?
I completely didn't even think about it.
I
We
got
were
mine. You can look at
all right. You
yours.
go first, and I'll go.
Mine is going to be a guy we've already talked about tonight, but I'm going to go and give him a nod anyway. It's going to be, I'm going to make sure it is him, Yuri Perez,
Yeah,
who spent two starts this week with giving up 0 runs, striking out what's that, 13 and a half per nine. Didn't walked like what, one batter in the two starts. I mean, gave up no runs again. I mean, this is a guy carrying Miami right now to second in division, first in the wild card, making them very much a playoff team and a team that can go out and buy, for the types of guys that we've been talking about. I'm really, really impressed with him. And, for a guy who's so violently, violent in his delivery and big velocity, and he's been able to have that command, that's massively impressive for me. So Yuri Perez, my player of the week for sure. Matt, who you got?
Um, I think I'm gonna go with we've talked a bit about him this year, but Ketel Marte, we haven't touched bases
Hmm.
on him in a while. He's been really good this year. This week was really nice. He had a 375 average this week, a 483 on base percentage, and a 917 slugging percentage. Hit 4 home runs this week, 262 WRC plus. He's had a really good year, a bounce back. He's finally been healthy for the full season, and just he's looked really solid for them. Been a big piece. 2.1 WAR already. Really good player. He's had some good seasons in the past. You look at 2021 and just 90 games, put up 2.3 WAR and a 140 WRC plus. You look at 2019, put up that 6 WAR season with a 150 WRC plus. This year, he's back to that level of player that he was
Hmm.
in 2021 and in 2019. You mentioned Manny Machado with the odd years being bad. Like this, it looks like Ketel Marte, the odd years are good. So,
Right.
definitely an interesting guy to look at, and he's had a really good week. So I think it's a good time to shout him out as to how good he's been this year.
Worth noting also that Ellie De La Cruz hit a cycle this week
Yes,
against the
that
Braves.
and they needed every bit of that cycle to win that game 11-10 too. It was
Right.
a big deal.
So yeah, big game for him as well. And I look on this weekly chart, a lot of Braves, a lot of Reds up at the top of the leaderboard. Matt Olson at 5 home runs this week. So McLean was good. Steer was really
Yeah,
good. Yeah, the Reds and Braves, man, that series was it almost felt like a playoff series the way those teams were kind of going back and forth. So
yeah,
a lot of the games were
yeah.
close.
I mean, you look at the list, and I just couldn't help but notice Travis Darno on the list.
He's
Uh,
back.
Sean Murphy got hurt and he had a hamstring strain, and he's back now, but he had been out for a while, and Travis Darno came in and was like a top 15 player in baseball for the week he was filling in
Hmm.
full time. So it's crazy, man.
Braves have so much depth. We talk about depth all the time, right? And I think Matt gets spoiled for it when it comes to, seeing a team that does go out of their way to provide that adequate MLB depth
Yep,
across several different positions to where an injury doesn't hurt you, poor play doesn't hurt you. They've just got guys that can step in.
yep, absolutely.
All right. With that, we went an hour and a half. It's a little long, but tune I think next week we're going to try to do a draft primer. So
Okay.
MLB draft, and then we'll also be around for the All Star game coming up. So look forward to that. July 4th. Got any plans?
I'd, Not as of right now. I'll probably go down to the lake on Tuesday for actually on the 4th, but I'm off on Monday. I took a vacation day, so I'm gonna take it
Yeah.
easy and might try to go out of town to find something to do. We'll see, but it's gonna be a good weekend. I hope everyone has a happy 4th and a lot of good baseball to watch. Hey, that might be a fun thing. I might go to a Braves game. You never know. So I'll but yeah, it's gonna be fun, and look forward to our next few weeks. I think we got some exciting things going on with maybe doing a draft primer, and then I think the live stream we're planning on doing for the All
Hmm.
Star game could be a fun thing to do. We haven't done that before, so I'm excited for that. Be on the lookout. So but yeah, hope everyone has a happy 4th.
Yep, should be good. Got the parents coming in. Might
Yeah,
try to go to
there you go.
we're going to go to a Cubs game. Might try to go to the Chicago street race too if we can. So
Oh, there you go.
should be a good little weekend here, and yeah, we'll see. So next talk we'll be looking at those draft prospects hopefully, and we'll see you guys next time.